Good evening, everybody. This is Gurudo King reading Volume 1 of the Unsearchable Riches. This is issue 26. This is beginning of a study called The Book of Esther by Vladimir Gelesnoff. This is definitely not my wheelhouse. I've never read the Book of Esther. I'm just being upfront with that. I believe this piece here is going to introduce me to the concepts of Esther, and I will probably be reading it. If it gets into like chapter 1 and says, versus if it does what Vladimir did, if he does what he did with Acts 1, where he does Acts 1 verses 1 through 11, at the beginning of that volume, I read this. Or I read Acts 1, 1 through 11. So I may do the same thing here with Esther. I do have it pulled up here on my Old Testament PDF of the concordant literal. So if that becomes necessary, I will take that route. But for now, we'll just start reading this. As I've said before, this just happens sometimes. I definitely don't have years upon years upon years and decades of study under my belt. I've got about 5. So it's just parts of the Bible and parts of study that I haven't gotten to. So I'm gonna hope that these guys can speak factually on things that I may not be aware of. Either way, at the end of the day, this is just a reading of someone else's work. So here we go. The Book of Esther. The sacred penman closes his narrative of Israel's vicissitudes in the land in the following pathetic manner. They mocked the messengers of God, and despised his word, and scoffed at his prophets, until the wrath of the Lord arose against his people, till there was no remedy. Therefore he brought upon them the king of the Chaldeans, who slew their young men with the sword in the house of their sanctuary, and had no compassion upon young man or maiden, old man or ancient. He gave them all into his hand. And all the vessels of the house of the Lord, and the treasures of the king and of his princes, all these he brought to Babylon. And they burned the house of God, and broke down the wall of Jerusalem, and burnt all the palaces thereof with fire, and destroyed all the goodly vessels thereof. And them that had escaped from the sword carried he away to Babylon, and they were servants to him and his sons until the reign of the kingdom of Persia. 2 Chronicles 36, verses 16 through 20. Such was the tragic end of Israel's career. Jehovah's dwelling place on earth is in ruins. The city which he had chosen is laid on heaps. His people have become a byword and a hissing among the heathen. The weeping prophet hung his harp, and gloating over the desolate, depopulated land and the smoldering ashes of the temple, took up his lamentation. How has the Lord covered the daughter of Zion with a cloud in his anger? He has cast down from heaven unto the earth the beauty of Israel, and has not remembered his footstool in the day of his anger. The Lord has swallowed up all the inhabitants of Jacob, and has not pitied. He has thrown down in his wrath the stronghold of the daughter of Judah. He has brought them down to the ground. He has profaned the kingdom and the princes thereof. Lamentations 2, verses 1 and 2. The books of the Restoration period resume these 3 threads at the very point where the Chronicles left them off. Ezra relates the rebuilding of the temple. Nehemiah narrates the rehabilitation of the city. Esther tells the deliverance of the people from threatened destruction. In the Old Testament, we have 2 attempts to annihilate Israel, combined with deliverances effected through divine intervention. One is told in Exodus and the other in Esther. The 2 attempts present some striking points of divergence. Pharaoh and Haman, though prompted alike by anti-Semitism, were actuated by different motives and employed diverse means to achieve their ends. Jewish antipathy was political in the one case and religious in the other. Pharaoh issued the following order to the Hebrew midwives: when you do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women, and see them upon the birth stool, if it be a son, then you shall kill him. But if it's a daughter, then she shall live. Exodus 1:16. This infamous decree testifies to Pharaoh's shrewdness and consummate skill. From the report of the Hebrew midwives, we learn of the effeminacy of the Egyptians. Exodus 1:19. They were fast becoming a race of degenerates and physical weaklings. Pharaoh was well aware of this. He was keen enough to foresee that a clash with the Hebrews was inevitable and could be averted only temporarily. He knew, too, how slender would be the chances of the Egyptians in a combat with their more virile and able-bodied sojourners. He accordingly conceived a subtle scheme to infuse new vigor into the veins of his decadent, moribund nation. By killing the males of Israel, the Hebrew women would have to wed Egyptian husbands. By this bold stroke of policy, a policy which combined sagacity and brutality, Pharaoh aimed to wipe out Israel as a nation and yet assimilate for his people the moral fiber and physical endurance which he had observed in the Hebrews and which were the cause of his anxiety and disquietude. Exodus 1, verses 8 through 14. Haman's decree was wholly different, and letters were sent by posts unto all the king's provinces to destroy, to slay, and to cause to perish all Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, even upon the 13th day of the month of Adar, and to take the spoil for them, of them, for a prey. I think that's Chronicles, but I don't know if that's 1 or 2. Maybe 1, 3:13. The crisis in the fortunes of Israel, which threatened to extirpate the race from the empire of Ahasuerus by the cruel vengeance of Haman, is altogether lacking in principle. It is simply a nameless, cold-blooded butchery inspired by personal aversion for Mordecai, whose refusal, in accordance with the law of God, to pay divine homage to a man wounded the vanity of the proud courter. True, he assigns a political as well as a religious reason to justify his contemplated action against the Jews. There's a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the peoples in all the various provinces of your kingdom, and their laws are diverse from those of every people. Neither keep they the king's laws. Therefore, it is not for the king's profit to suffer them. I believe this is Esther 3:8. Yet it is obvious that these reasons are a mere pretext to secure the king's sanction for his bold project. His proposed campaign of extermination is the mad and wanton act of a parvenu drunk with power, elated by his elevation to viziership, seeking wholesale retaliation against the Jews for the trivial personal offense of one of their race. The contrast between the actions of the deity are even more pronounced. In Exodus, God acts publicly. His representative at the court of Egypt delivers an ultimatum. Thus says Jehovah, let my people go, and supports his demand by a ponderous display of supernatural power. At every stage of the conflict, Jehovah asserts his right to rule in the kingdom of men. Esther, on the other hand, depicts his secret, silent working behind the scenes and proves to demonstrate that the King of Heaven overrules human actions and makes them subversive or subserve his counsels. Exodus exhibits his transcendent power, while Esther traces the operations of his multifarious wisdom. As the story progresses, his omnipresence is seen. His resources are shown to be exhaustless, his knowledge fathomless. In Exodus, we see omnipotence displayed. In Esther, we see omnipotence perfected through weakness. Reading the book, we are struck with the frequent recurrence of the word king. It occurs 196 times. Besides this, Ahasuerus is mentioned by name 29 times, and his kingdom is referred to 26 times. This fact acquires deeper significance as we note that the royal feast in chapters 1, verses 1 through 4, when Ahasuerus showed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the honor of his excellent majesty for 104 days, sustains no essential relation to the narrative. This is clear from the fact that the feast on which the events transpired, whereon the story of the book impinges, is introduced with the phrase, and when these things were fulfilled, the king made a feast unto all the people that were present in Shushan the palace. Chapter 1, verse 5. Its only object seems to enhance the greatness of the king and the glory of his kingdom. The epilogue also serves the same purpose. It dwells on the acts of his power and of his might written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Medo and Persia, Medo-Persian Empire, and adds to the vast empire extending from India to Ethiopia, the Isles of the Sea. Chapter 10, verses 1 and 2. But though the great royal feast is wanting in an essential relation to the narrative, yet it is indispensable to a right understanding thereof. Its obvious intention is to engage our thoughts, fasten our eyes, and rivet our attention on the king, not for his own sakes, surely, but because, like Pharaoh of old, he was raised up that God might show his power, and that his name might be published abroad in all the earth. Exodus 9:16. Throughout the book, we see two forces at work, one hostile to the Jews and one favorable to them. Both act through human agents, but it is evident all the while that they are mere instruments in the hands of higher powers. The two forces converge in Ahasuerus. Pressure is brought upon him from both sides. At the start, the conflict is hopelessly unequal. All chances of success are on the side of the Jew's enemy. He is supported by the king. He wields the power of the empire. He has the sinews of war. He controls the network of government organization and employs it to carry out his plot against the Jews. The Jews had nothing by which to counteract such formidable array of power, nothing but prayer and fasting. Their outlook was fearfully gloomy. Their case was hopeless. Haman had brought about an estrangement between the throne and the Jews. Yeah, wow, that's so interesting. It's like a practical demonstration that they're not allowed to rule. I'm definitely interested in reading this. The unalterable law of the Medes and the Persians interposed between them an impassable chasm. A firman written in the king's name and signed with the king's ring, no man may reverse. Esther 2:19 and 8:8. The book of Daniel illustrates the mischiefs engendered by that strange custom. There we see with what ease adroit courters took advantage of it to wreak vengeance on their victims and ward off interference from the crown. Daniel 6, verses 8 to 15. This unalterable law had fixed a day for a general massacre of the Jews in the 127 provinces of Ahasuerus. Did God forsake his people? No. Though he is not among them, yet he is for them. Though his name is never mentioned and his presence is not visible, yet his hand is everywhere in evidence. He moves amidst the shadows, paving the way, directing the actions, and shaping the events for a final reversal of the enemy's plot and his everlasting confusion. It is written in the Proverbs, the king's heart is in the hand of Jehovah as well as the water courses. He turns it whithersoever he will. Proverbs 21:1. The book of Esther illustrates how, in what way, and by what means he turned the heart of Ahasuerus whithersoever he willed. It traces the manner of his working in the world until the day arrives for open interference in the affairs of men. It is written again, the heaven for height and the earth for depth, and the heart of kings is unsearchable. Proverbs 25:3. But here we are to see how the Lord searched the heart of the mighty Persian sovereign, who, at the instigation of an unprincipled underling, threw the weight of his authority in opposition to him and forced him to carry out his counsels of mercy for the favored nation. He defeated the enemies of the Jews with their own weapons. Interesting. He used the very law which no man may reverse to tie the king's hands and make him a willing, though unconscious, minister of his pleasure. After the promulgation of the royal commandment concerning Vashti, we read, after these things, when the wrath of King Ahasuerus was pacified, he remembered Vashti and what she had done and what was decreed against her. Chapter 2, verse 1. No doubt, after the anger of Ahasuerus had subsided, upon calm reflection, he regretted the occurrence and would fain have reinstated Vashti. But at such times as he thought on what she had done, he thought also of what was decreed against her, and felt himself powerless to make amends. Later on, he acquiesced to the proposal of the very men who had framed the decree against Vashti, that the king give her royal estate unto another that is better than she. Thus Jehovah utilized the Persian law, which changes not, to restrain the king's impulses and reserve the crown and royal estate for the woman of his choice. God has chosen the weak things of the world that he might put to shame the things that are strong. 1 Corinthians 1:27. Our book furnishes a practical demonstration of this fact. He frustrates the device of the all-powerful court favorite through the youthful queen, who feels all the tremor of an ordinary woman when suddenly called upon to fill a heroic role. Fast you for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my maidens will fast in like manner, and so will I go in unto the king, which is not according to the law. And if I perish, perish. He counteracts and confounds Haman's arrogance and power by Esther's beauty and her tears. Yeah, yeah. Well, I can see how an arrogant man would be brought and seduced, even. I could see seduction here. I could see manipulation here. I could see powerful wooing, just a pure wooing. I don't know if this is love or not because I haven't read it. So, yeah, I might have to just read. As far as I'm taking it, Esther's the good protagonist. So, Esther seemed to realize intuitively that against all the power of Haman and the king, she must fight with the attraction of her beauty. Wow, could it be she realized, I'll use my looks? Concordantly, she does not invoke vengeance on the foe, but arranges for a tete-a-tete, I don't know what that is, ta-ta-ta, I don't know what that means, banquet, and captures the royal sybarite by the charm and force of her domestic attractiveness. The Book of Esther covers a period of 10 years, from the 3rd to the 13th year of King Ahasuerus, as may be seen from the following table. One is the Great Feast in the 3rd year of Ahasuerus in verses 1 and 3. Though 2 is the coronation of Esther in the 7th year. 2 and 16. I don't know if this is. Oh, never mind. Chapter 1, verse 3, chapter 2, 16. 3, the lot cast from the 1st to the 12th month in the 12th year of Ahasuerus in chapter 3, verse 7. 4 is Haman's decree issued in the 13th year of Ahasuerus, the 13th day of the 1st month in chapter 3, verse 12. 5 is Esther's decree issued 2 months and 10 days later in the 3rd month, the 23rd day of the month in the 13th year of Ahasuerus in chapter 8, verse 9. And 6 is the slaughter of the Jews' enemies in the 13th year of Ahasuerus, the 12th month, the 13th and 14th days of the month. Chapter 9, verse 17. Is there a 7th? Nope, just 6, and that's it. So, okay, that's a great, like, structural summation. That's exactly what I was looking for, like a preparation for the book. And then I imagine the other 2 articles are going to, I think there's only 2 others, maybe there's another 3rd one. But I imagine they're going to go through like 3 or 4 chapters each of the book. So at the beginning of those videos, I can just read the first parts. I'll read it once beforehand and then reread it a second time live. But I think it could be very valuable. I've never read it, so, and I mean, it's the Word of God, so. Okay, that is going to be it for this video. That's going to wrap up the volume 1 in a time sense. If you're watching the playlist on volume 1, there is one more after this. It's just issue 27. That's already been released at the time of this video. So you can now witness all of volume 1 completed, all done, So yeah, I think that was a really cool experience. I'd love to continue going through these volumes as time progresses, and I think I will. And I may go back live today and go through the editorials for the Concordant Volume 1. I don't know if I want to do that tonight or tomorrow. Maybe I'll do some tonight and then some tomorrow if it gets to be too long. Um, but certainly not going to get anywhere by just yapping you. So, grace and peace. Thank you for anyone watching. And I hope y'all have a great week.